It was Stephen Harper who originally said that in 2030, Alberta will be phased out of fossil fuels.
Hello, everyone. Joining us today, we have Kelly Lorencz from the People's Party of Alberta and good friend of mine. We are going to talk a little bit about the political situation here in Alberta as it relates to the Conservative Party of Canada, the UCP, as well as some issues surrounding the United Nations and how that plays into what's going on here in Alberta. A number of other different topics, so stay tuned. Hi everyone, welcome back to our next video. Today we have Kelly Lorencz, who I'm going to venture out to say has become one of my good friends. Am I allowed to say that?
Yes, you are.
I'm going to assume the privilege anyway. So Kelly was one of my running mates during the People's Party of Canada past election in October 2019. And now he has taken a little bit of a different stance and has started the People's Party of Alberta. So having listened to what some of the Albertans have been saying in particular and noting a little bit of the direction where Canada has been going and how Alberta fits into that, as well as with the UCP and our present provincial government. Kelly's smiling. Oh, he's so polite. So I thought it would be fun to just have a conversation with Kelly and get some of his perspectives and why he started the People's Party of Alberta and how is that going to be different from the UCP, and answer some of your questions as well. So welcome, Kelly.
Thank you.
This is also formal for us.
I know.
We're normally around having a coffee at the coffee shop.
It's a little bit more rigid, I guess.
More rigid.
Yeah.
Hardly.
We're good. We're good. Yeah, and you know, we started off the People's Party. It was actually very interesting because I sat down with Max here in Calgary. You remember at the Metropolitan there?
Yes.
So we had that big event with Max in downtown Calgary and sat down with the people here in Alberta, and Max basically tasked me with talking with these people, and as the election went on, we continued to work on it, and over time, what had happened was we decided that there was a real need in Alberta for the People's Party of Alberta. So we decided to start that. And one of the biggest questions that people always ask, well, why? And so we were talking about the Fair Deal panel. We went to the Fair Deal panel. I went to 5 out of the 9. And literally,
I went to 2. He's braver than I am.
Well, it was interesting because I went from northern Alberta all the way down to southern Alberta because the voices are different, the concerns are different. But the one consistent thing that people wanted was to be heard. The grassroots sort of movement was gone. It was promised to them and it was taken away. And we decided as a group that when we started the People's Party of Alberta, that it would very much stay grassroots. And it would give the voice of the people back. And that's actually now enshrined in our Constitution. The people have the choice as to what direction this party goes. They have, if they want to create a debate on a particular topic, then we'll create that debate, just like with Max. And we have some pretty healthy debates in order to bring things forward, that's for sure.
So the biggest question is, we're going to get the same thing that you got with the People's Party of Canada scenario. You're going to split the vote. So now we have the UCP and we have, the typical traditional parties still, the New Democratic Party. How do you fit into that? Are you going to split the vote? Are we going to create some division here and allow the NDP back in? Because those are all the same fears that you're going to come up against.
They're always the same fears. I never believed in that narrative during the federal election, and I don't believe in that narrative now. If people truly believe in voting for their values and voting, a party should have to earn that vote. So one of the things that we've done as a Provincial Party of Alberta is we've looked at other parties' platforms. What do we think is good? What do we think is bad? We took a few from each. And we're going to incorporate that because we don't believe that we should be a party of just one single vision. There are some good things that the NDP have that are good, that would help Alberta. There are some things...
We just lost half our voters, or our viewers.
but unfortunately, when you talk to the people of Alberta, or if you listen to them, just like at the Fair Deal panels, that's exactly what you hear. But it's when you toe a party line, you restrict yourself into what that one party's vision is. But if you don't do that, if you allow yourself to open debate and freedom to look at other options, then why isn't it possible to say that the NDP have a few good things that would benefit Albertans? The UCP have a few good things that would benefit Albertans. So why not create that debate? But it's about, inclusiveness. It's about including all Albertans. It's not just about specific targeted group of people.
That's interesting, because in one of the last videos that we did, we talked about, or I talked about in particular with Jason and Barry, how by aligning yourself with this party politics, we end up creating these divisions, and then all we look for are differences, as opposed to looking at what makes us similar.
Right.
And I think that is part of the problem Canada-wide, because we have political parties today that are dividing the country into this group, that group, this group, that group. And I think Max even himself came out in his last video, The Political Circus, and that's what he's talking about. We used to have French and Canadian and English Canada, and that was a big division. Now we have so many different fractions.
Right.
We're divided. We're not united anymore. And a lot of that comes down, I think, to ego. I had one of the comments on one of the last videos we did was, one gentleman was, I just can't trust a politician anymore. And this is what politicians have done to the people of Canada,
Right.
and around the world really in general, is they have created these problems. They themselves, for the most part, are the problem, and people get involved in party politics without looking at the underlying issues, the problems themselves, and what is the solution being proposed to fix that problem. Because does it have to be your idea? Is there room to say that maybe the Liberals do come up with a good idea once in a while? Maybe the NDP do have a good idea,
Right. But that's what I'm saying. So as a party, whether it's nationally or whether it's provincially, it's about creating the debate. And one of the nice things that I really liked about the People's Party of Canada, and we're going to run into the same thing with the People's Party of Alberta, myself included, I'm not a career politician. I've had to work blood, sweat, and tears for my paycheck. I currently, as you know...
You're not a trust fund baby?
No, I wish I was. I wouldn't have to work at a prison. But again, so I work with federal corrections, and I deal with all of the issues that society has to deal with there. So I've worked hard for what I have to do, and I believe in the values that Canada have and Canadians have. And so, like I said, it's not about one party. Far too often we've had parties where mainstream parties where you have to toe the party line. And if you don't toe the party line, well, you're either out or you're disciplined. Well, that's not the case with us. We're going to say, you know what? The party line is the 4 principles, the same as the PPC. And as long as you fall within that, you can debate anything that you want. And that's about listening to the people of your constituency and what they have to say and what they have to bring forward. We're going to have it where if the people of our membership want to bring forward policy, it takes 5 members to bring forward a policy to the EDA, and then they bring it up to the provincial board.
So how is this different, though, than what the UCP... The UCP was supposed to solve the problems for Alberta. How is it that we have to introduce a new party? Why can't we do that through the UCP, for example?
Well, they tried it with the UCP. The UCP initially started off with what do they call it, the Grassroots guarantee. As far as I understood, Jason Kenney ran on the Grassroots guarantee when he was running for leadership of the UCP. As soon as he was elected, that Grassroots guarantee mysteriously disappeared. And then when it came to creating policy by the people, it started off the same as we are right now, 5. Then it went to 50, and now I believe you need 200 people to sign off on a policy before it's brought up to the leadership. And even then, Jason Kenney at this point right now, if he doesn't like it, it's not moving forward, and it'll die. So that's not grassroots. That's not listening to the people, right? And so that's why we've got it instilled into our Constitution that it's only going to take 5, and we're going to maintain it that way. And it's really about giving the voice back to the people.
Mm-hmm. So is the voice, though, not being represented right now through the UCP?
Well, if the voices were being heard, we wouldn't have had the Fair Deal panel at all, right? I mean...
But that was intended to...
Sure.
Get your voices heard, and that was initiative of the UCP. So
one of the problems that you're going to find, and listening to even some members of the board, is each member of the board has a difference of opinion on what they heard at that Fair Deal panel. So you've got 7 or 6 on that, and they all have different points of view. It all goes to one chair lady that's going to write the final report. But how different do people think that report is going to be from the 2004 panel that they had, and where nothing was implemented from that report either? This is just purely smoke and mirrors to appease the people of Alberta to say that, yes, we heard you. I don't think they have been heard. I think it was an exercise in futility, and I really believe it's time for a change. And, I'll talk real quickly about Brian Jean. He said it's about time to get it right for Albertans, because we're not doing that right now.
So what's getting it right, though?
Well, we need to look after Albertans first. We need to look after Alberta. We need to create, constitutional reform. We need to take control of the things that the Constitution allows us to take control of. Our money, our police force, all of these things. We need to create leverage for Alberta. So if Albertans down the road want to have a referendum on separation, then we're ready for it. Right now, a referendum on separation, we're not ready for it. We don't have anything to support us once if it should pass. But it's about educating people on that as well. It's not as simple as a simple majority of 50% plus 1. There's a lot of steps that need to take place prior to that before a referendum can even be taken.
And it is an education process. There's a lot of fear around that you'd have to explain to people, the differences and the necessity, if it does come to that, as to what it would take. I did put out a question some time ago and asked, because I've been to some of the Fair Deal panels as well, and I heard pretty much the same comments from most people. Oh, don't take away my pension plan, the CPP. Right. Well, I don't think that's really a big issue. You replace the CPP with APP. It's not a big deal. It's definitely something that can be done. But just helping people understand and educating people again as to, it wouldn't be taking anything away. There'd be some changes, but you don't have to take anything away to have probably a better solution than what we are currently dealing with today.
Well, you and I have talked about this. Control the money.
Yep.
You control the money. You have teeth.
Yep.
Right now, Alberta's got a whole lot of bark, but not a whole lot of bite. Right. So if we use the Constitution to create that infrastructure, start controlling the money, then we have leverage. We have the ability at that point to ask for changes, constitutional changes, border changes. A lot of people aren't aware that the last time the Constitution was used to change a border was as early as 1996. So if we can do it then, why can't we do it now to allow Alberta that access to tidewater in both Hudson Bay and the Pacific? But we need teeth. And right now, not only teeth, we need a leadership. We need a provincial government that's actually going to stand up for Albertans. We need to have the ability to say no.
So there's a good point, though, because you said a government and leadership that's going to stand up for Albertans. Jason Kenney is right now the Premier of Alberta. Is that not his job?
You would think it's his job, but so you know my background. So I'm a veteran, and I've followed a lot of great leaders. Jason Kenney's not a leader, and you can ask any veteran out there what a great leader is. A great leader leads from the front and takes and listens to the people that they need to listen to in order to make effective decisions. And that's not happening with Jason Kenney. It's Jason Kenney's way, or it's no way. And that's the problem for Alberta right now. Jason Kenney has done a lot of different things. So Jason Kenney has attended Bilderberg. Jason Kenney has attended. Well, he was with Stephen Harper when they created the equalization formula. All of these things that Albertans are saying that they want change, equalization as well. He's not gonna. Why would he want to change his legacy? That's his formula. But again, like we said earlier, a lot of people don't understand what it takes just to change the equalization formula.
Yeah, so controlling the money, I think, and I've said this a number of times now, even publicly, is that's the number one. Evelyn Rothschild made that very clear. Evelyn Rothschild, RBC, big banks, central banks around the world. I care not who runs the country if I control the money supply. It's not quite exactly that quote, but that was the content of it. And Alberta right now has no ability to make a demand because we are all bark. We have no teeth, like you said. Jason Kenney, I think I agree with you, ran under the context he was going to be a little bit of that bulldog, somebody with teeth, somebody who had experience, knew how the political system worked. But I think that almost has backfired a little bit on us. He does know the system, does know how it works. He's gotten to where he is. He's now the Premier of Alberta, and he's now playing politics again, right. Except this time it's politics with Albertans. And I look at how he aligned the UCP with the Conservative Party of Canada back in the federal election. And if he was looking out for Albertans' interests, purely Albertans' interests, the PPC, the People's Party of Canada, aligned perfectly with what the UCP were asking for, perfectly. There was very little that I could have found that differentiated the two. And yet he not only encouraged all of his MLAs to support the Conservative Party of Canada MPs that were running, but almost, like you said, this is the way it's going to be.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I mean, where was Jason Kenney's name? I mean, he was brought up as the potential leader for the Conservative Party of Canada from the UCP. So his interests directly align with that of the Conservative Party of Canada. And what people have to understand is that it was Stephen Harper who originally said that in 2030 Alberta will be phased out of fossil fuels. Well, that's a.
So hold on. So let's talk about that, because I don't think most people would agree with that. I think most people think that the Conservative Party of Canada is totally all about Alberta and Albertans and fossil fuels, and they're fighting for that and for our economy and our lifestyle here. So.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example of that. You and I talked about this. So just recently, the Buffalo Declaration. The Buffalo Declaration by Michelle Rempel. Well, Michelle Rempel sits on the IPU.
So you have to explain what the IPU is.
So the IPU is the Interparliamentary Union, which is, if you look at the constitution for the IPU, they are mandated to follow any direction or actions that the UN mandates. They're obligated. They have to follow it.
So let's draw the connection so people are very clear. So the IPU,
Parliamentary Union,
and they are following a UN mandate.
They follow a UN mandate, correct. So right now, that's 4 from the Buffalo Declaration. My last count, there was no less than 15 members of Parliament from Alberta that sit on this IPU, with Michelle Rempel sitting on the executive of this IPU. Alberta currently has 5 sitting senators, 3 of which were appointed by Stephen Harper. All 3 of those sit on the IPU. And we really believe that the Conservative Party of Canada has Alberta's best interests at heart. If they did step down, step away from that IPU, step away from the UN, make it public that you're stepping away. Until that happens, you're no different than the Liberal Party.
So the Conservative Party of Canada wants that UN seat.
They do.
And they've been working towards that UN seat. They support Agenda 2030, which is a UN initiative.
Which was initially started by Stephen Harper. Stephen Harper is actually on record, you can search it in the newspapers, he's actually on record as saying 2030, Alberta will be phased out of fossil fuels.
Yeah. So that's the important part for me, because when we started these videos and we started, I got involved in federal politics, was because I was tired of the media presentation of this viewpoint, which is often the complete opposite of what reality is. The blockades today. You know, the media is presenting that this is a much bigger issue than it is. This is not an issue of, 20, 30, maybe a couple of hundred people, but this is a whole First Nations group, which 80% of the Wet'suwet'en people actually support the Coastal GasLink, for example.
That's right.
So for me, education is huge, and you know that because we've talked a lot about education, whether it's people in schools and teachers who I think I honestly believe are being given the wrong information, right down through, no matter what we do today, there's a whole re-education process that has to happen. So I really want people to understand, because we've had people who said, well, we've got a new leader potentially for the CPC, and we're going to have a new direction. And I'm sitting here and I'm going, it's not the leader of the CPC that's going to change anything. It's the administration that's behind it. Well, the party.
It's the Conservative Fund. Stephen Harper ran the Conservative Fund.
But he stepped aside now.
Sure he did. Yeah, we both know what that's worth. But at the end of the day, if you control the money, you control the direction of that party.
Yep.
So the Conservative Fund believes that this is where we need to be. Stephen Harper was very clear on that. And yes, we do have a current run for the leadership of the Conservative Party, but which one has ever said that we'll step away from the UN? Not one of them will broach that. They'll all say, they're all saying the right things, but it's easy to say something. Your actions speak louder than your words, and it's the inaction that Albertans are having the problem with. And it's the continual inaction, be it at the federal level with the Conservative Party or the Liberals or the UCP here in Alberta.
So I want to, again, make it very clear and draw some parallels between the CPC and the UN, and the fact that and this is going to get confusing with all these CPC, UPC, UN, but the Conservative Party on the federal level aligns with the UN agenda.
Yes.
And that UN agenda, I think in particular, is in extreme conflict with Alberta and Albertans, and how Albertans see their role in Canada. So let's talk about the UN and some of what's part of this. We have the Paris Accord, right? So climate change.
Climate change, yeah.
Right? You don't see anybody on the Conservative Party of Canada today jumping up and down going, climate change is not real. It's very much a real issue, and the climate is always changing. I don't think anybody's ever denied that. Could we be doing things better? Absolutely we could. Should we? Absolutely we should. But to what extent? To what extreme?
When we have a responsible government and we have a responsible provincial government and we get back into the oil and gas industry like we should, like Alberta is meant to do, okay, and we produce this oil, we get Albertans back to work, what we should be doing is taking some of that money and reinvesting it into the future. We should be reinvesting it into...
But I've heard the Conservative Party of Canada say that. I've heard the UCP say that. And so our oil and gas companies today are already doing that. We have some of the cleanest oil and gas in the world. Yeah. Some of the most ethically sourced.
But again, it's like putting your money where your mouth is. right? If Alberta wants to be the leader in the world for oil and gas, which we are, then why can't we be the leader in the world for other technologies? Having oil and gas invest into research into cleaner technology.
But they do that now.
They do, but that's not being promoted, right? We need to get that out there that this is what we're doing. There's always going to be a need for greener technology, cleaner technology, respecting the environment. And nobody said it for the PPC, nobody's saying it for the PPA that we don't agree with you. Yes, we do need to do this, but we also need to be smart about this. And the only way to get from point A to point B is with fossil fuels. That's the bottom line. I mean, at the end of the day, I had this conversation with my daughter. Dad, we got to get rid of fossil fuels and all this stuff. So it was kind of harsh for me, but take your phone and smash. Oh, that was created with fossil fuels. Sorry. Well, Dad, so it's about education.
Did you replace the phone?
It was an old phone, but it's about education, right? But it's no different. We have to understand. As a kid growing up, I was taught that I had to respect my elders, and I still believe in that. But as the elders, we also have to have the ability to listen to younger generations and what they feel and what they believe to happen. I had a conversation with a young lad, 17, just graduated out of high school, and he is absolutely adamant that the world is ending in 12 years, so why bother getting a job or doing all of this? And it's like, you try to explain to them, how many climate emergencies, catastrophes that I've lived through in my time? You got to take it into perspective here, right? So it's a UN agenda that's being driven, and whether people want to believe it or not, it really is true when they talk about a one world government, and that's the direction that they're pushing us. When you have the UN giving Canada demands or orders to stop the RCMP from doing their job or stopping construction on a liquid natural gas line or anything along that line, we're already encroaching. I've worked with the UN, and I know the corruption that is there, so it's a slippery slope, very slippery.
So you've worked with the UN. I think pretty much everybody in our party has done a little bit of research into the Agenda 2030 and whatnot, and we all would agree that the UN is a corrupt organization. People say, how can 193 countries, of which the majority are not democratic? Mm-hmm. I just posted, on Venezuela and where it started, and not much different from Canada, really. Very wealthy nation, very natural resource rich. And we look at where they're at today. Some people don't want to believe that that's a possible outcome here in Canada. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll sort of equate it to the Wexit. Okay, so Wexit talks about we want to separate. Maybe we'll become a state or a territory of the U.S., and the U.S. will be our savior. My question to them is, and I put this to Peter Downing as well, how'd that work for Puerto Rico? Puerto Rico had all of their natural resources taken away from them, and once they were done, and they were left off to the side, now they're fending for themselves. Why would we expect that to be any different for us here? Very wealthy with the oil and gas, but once that's gone, then what? But then on top of that, you have to look at First Nations. First Nations have already said, we're not leaving. So again... Well,
why would you leave when it's not the provinces that provide them with their funding and their special privileges, but the federal government?
Exactly. So you've got to convince you got to convince First Nations that leaving Canada is going to be more beneficial for them. Is it? I actually don't see it being beneficial for anybody, because there's... if you look at Wexit, and I don't even want to call it a plan. I don't even know what you would call it. But their idea or their ideals, they want to leave and just say, okay, we're done. We're going to use the UN to help us do what we need to do. But once we're done, then we're done with the UN.
That lacks a little bit of principle.
Right.
Right, it does. Because on the one hand, they're saying we want sovereignty and we're going to be our own province. But if you're not a part of Canada, it's really Canada that has a relationship with the United Nations and the agreement. So are you going to enter into a contract with the United Nations? And then, yeah, there's a lot of conflicting.
It's a challenge. I mean, you and I have talked enough about this to know that the challenge that we're faced here is not about... We have to create the infrastructure. We just have to. You and I have talked about this before. I mean, the UN is not going to help us. The simple fact is the UN, I've seen it firsthand, as we discussed. I've been on UN missions where I've seen cargo loads have been stolen the night before by warlords and nothing is done. And yet the UN figured, oh, great, we got everything that we asked for, knowing, you know.
Well, Justin Trudeau was just in Africa, and one of his comments, I don't know if he meant to say it or not, but one of his comments was, I hope some of this money gets to the people. And
none of it will. I've spent months and months in Africa, Rwanda, Kenya, Somalia, and none of that money will get to the people. It only makes the wealthy there wealthier, and it makes the corrupt there more corrupt. So who are we, in fact, helping? All he's sitting there doing is giving money to people in order to try and secure a Security Council seat. To what end?
Let's talk. So what would the benefit to Canada be to be on the UN Council?
I don't see a benefit at all. In all honesty.
So why is everybody, whether it's the Liberal Party or the Conservative Party, why are they so obsessed with having this UN seat?
I can only speak from my own personal opinion.
That's what it's all about, personal opinions.
I believe it's because of this one world order or one world government that they're looking at instilling. Okay, when you have a seat on the Security Council and we end up going into this one world government, well, now we have a say. But then there's also the potential for that seat to turn into a leadership position. It's about ego. It's about power.
Let's destroy an entire country, economics, 37 million people's lives. Mm-hmm. You know, I know the UN has stated that they would like Canada as a second world country and a first world country. My sister kindly sends me these little tidbits and notes. She has her law degree, does quite a bit of due diligence and research, and she's always sending me these little comments and notes about the UN this and the UN that. But if we go and we look at the pursuit of this UN, and so there is one world. I don't understand why Canada would give up, and there's some debate even around that as to whether or not Canada even is a sovereign country. We won't even go there today, but...
That's a long conversation, but yeah. The easiest way to understand that, in my mind, is it's about control. Okay, it's about power, distribution of wealth. It's very much about self-interest. I mean, simple fact of the matter is, you look at even immigration into Canada. Every premier has the same amount of power as the prime minister when it comes to immigration.
But Jason Kenney likes the immigration policy and has brought in a number of refugees and been very supportive of that.
There's nothing wrong with bringing in refugees. We have to be able to look after Albertans first, period. We have 180,000 Albertans out of work right now.
Apparently, there was an interesting statistic because we were talking the other day and somebody said 7.3% or something like that are unemployed, but 23% are out of work.
Right. So what is it? I mean, even the 23%, we'll play with that number, because when I ran in the federal election, the riding that I ran in, it was the unemployment in that riding was actually higher than the provincial average and the national average, which says a lot about the community. We want to get the communities back to work as well. But the 23% that are out of work, okay, we need to be able to get them back to work. And that's about looking after Albertans first, putting Albertans first. So right now, it's about using the laws and the acts, not against them, but using their own laws and acts, use them in our favor. So again, the Constitution, taking control of the things that we're entitled to take control of under the Constitution.
So let's talk about that, because the federal government over the last number of years, especially since the first Trudeau, in the last 40, 50 years, we've seen the federal government assume more and more and more power. And we see, our provincial premiers asking the federal government now for things I believe that provincially they already have the power and the right to do, but they're asking for permission from a federal government. I thought the way that Canada was constructed was that the provinces, had more power than the federal government, unless it came a federal issue like pipelines that crossed provincial borders and things like that, a Trans-Canada highway that was meant to connect, the railways, those types of things. So why aren't we using them? If we have them already, why aren't we using them?
The easiest way to explain that, so are you familiar with the Gang of Eight?
Yes, we've talked about that in the past.
So the Gang of Eight was the 8 premiers that fought Trudeau Sr. prior to signing the Constitution. There was a number of things that they didn't like or didn't want, or one province wanted.
I just like the name, the Gang of Eight.
The Gang of Eight. So, but that's exactly it. But it was 8 premiers who were willing to hold the Prime Minister to task. And ever since the Constitution was signed, it seems like every premier since has given up more and more and more power. It comes down to a point, when are we going to finally have a provincial premier, Alberta, Saskatchewan, wherever, that's going to say, you know what, I'm entitled to these different areas, the revenues.
Quebec has done it.
Quebec didn't sign the Constitution, though.
But Quebec has made it very clear what their provincial jurisdiction entitles them to. So
why haven't we?
That's a good question.
We haven't had a leader yet that's willing to stand up and say, you know what, no, we're taking this.
So instead of being so mad maybe at Quebec, maybe we should be looking at what they're doing. Right.
But Quebec is doing it right. They're standing up for what they believe in. They're standing up for their people. They have a premier that's saying, no, we're taking control of this, end of story. We never have since 1982 had a premier that said we're taking control of the same things. Why? We're sitting here complaining about Quebec, but yet they're doing it right, and we could do everything that they're doing. We just don't have leaders that want to do that for us. So you have to ask yourself why.
So are you going to run for the leadership of the People's Party of Alberta?
I may run, but my goal, honestly, is to represent whomever. If I'm in a riding, I'll represent the people of that riding best. Obviously, you and I have talked a lot. I believe in what we're doing. I get really excited about doing this. I'm excited for the people of Alberta because finally, it's about picking. I like to pick a fight, so it's about picking a fight. And the perfect example that I like to use is the Deputy Prime Minister. Can't remember her name right off the hand.
Catherine?
No. Freeland.
Oh, Christina Freeland.
Freeland showed up here to talk to Jason Kenney in Calgary. Well, that's the Deputy Prime Minister. In my mind, the Deputy Prime Minister meets with the Deputy Premier. Okay, that didn't happen. Then they're having a press conference in Calgary, and she decides to speak in French. Well, for me, that would have been a very easy, hold on a second, we're stopping the press conference here. You're in Alberta.
Yeah.
You either speak English, or there's the door, get out, and I'll finish the press conference.
Yeah, actually, Jason and I were having a conversation. Remember when Jason Kenney was having his meeting with Justin Trudeau in Ottawa? and they were talking in English, and then Jason Kenney started speaking in French.
Yeah.
And I understand that Canada is both French and English, but to Albertans, the majority are English. So I looked at that and I went, that seemed a bit of a political move rather than a...
Well, got to remember, like I said before, Jason Kenney was supposed to be one of those people that were running for the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's not unusual that he's trying to talk to the people of Quebec. But if you're trying to talk to the people of Quebec and compromise, what are you doing for the people of Alberta? I mean, it recently just backfired on Jason Kenney, where in December, I believe it was, he sent a shipment of propane to Quebec because they were short and everybody was going to get cold. Now all of a sudden we have Quebec going, we're going to we want Tech Frontier stopped. Well, so much for your generosity there, Jason, because now you've given and they're taking more. So what I don't understand is Jason Kenney has the ability to curtail. Peter Lougheed did it up to 85%. Rachel Notley did it up to 15%. What's he afraid of? If you really believe in standing up for the people of Alberta, take control of the money. You don't get your way, guess what? I'm turning off the taps.
Yeah, and so we keep talking about take control of the money. It's not that I don't think that difficult a thing to implement. And what we really mean is Albertans pay taxes. And right now those taxes are all collected at the federal level and then given back to the provinces.
Right.
So what we're proposing and what Kelly's talking about, and we've had many discussions, is that Alberta collect its own taxes.
Yeah.
Right? So if Alberta collects its own taxes, now rather than Kenney having to go beg for a handout or a deal or to get some of that money back, really the federal government has to write an invoice that says, here's what you owe us, and at least Alberta has a choice whether to pay it or not to pay it or negotiate, but this thus giving us some teeth at the table.
Right, and that does a lot of things. That will address equalization as well.
Well, at least it puts it back on the table as a discussion, because right now they can just completely ignore us.
They can completely ignore us because we send them the money,
Yeah.
They just take it all, and then this is all that's left. But if we control the money, they'll invoice us, and we go, well, you know what? Hold on a second here. We have infrastructure here. We have people here that are unemployed. We need to fix our infrastructure first. So this is going to take us this much money. This is all we've got left. Take it or leave it. Well, what are they going to do? If we've got control of everything that the Constitution already allows us to, are they going to penalize us? Yeah, they might. But you know what?
But then how?
No, you're right. But then how? But then at that point, if they find some way, well, you know what? Okay, now I'm going to start curtailing.
And this was where my comment for Jason Kenney, and I think I sent out a tweet one time when he had said something, or he had tweeted, and I commented back on, I'm going, if you really wanted to make a splash right now and show Albertans that you are really standing up for Alberta, I would give CRA and the federal government notice that we will collect our own taxes. You can invoice us effective January 1st, 2021. Gives them Alberta, time to set up the right process in place. But could you imagine, because we talked about, well, what would the federal government do if we chose, let's say, not to pay for something? Are they going to come arrest the premier of a province?
But that's exactly it, right?
Well, I'd love to see it, because could you imagine the response that Albertans would have?
I'd be the first one to put my hands out for the handcuffs. Let's go, boys.
Well, but we got to get to you, because I think every Albertan would come to rally behind
Absolutely, they would.
Their premier who would do and take such a bold action as that.
I would love to be that person. I work in a prison, so I would love for that to happen. But at the end of the day, when you look...
I hope you have good relationships with your inmates.
That's exactly.
You're in a cell next to George and John. And...
Yeah, exactly. That's all I need. But if you look at it, if we have one province that finally steps up and says enough, Canada needs one province to finally stand up and say enough. and then you'll see other provinces follow in line.
And thank you for bringing that up, because Wexit, it's Western separation. You know, let's bring BC, let's bring Saskatchewan. It's this big Western movement. And the provinces only have provincial jurisdiction over their own province. So I like the Jordan Peterson, you know, clean up your own room, right? Clean up your own backyard. Yeah. So I think no matter what happens, Alberta has to do for Alberta. That doesn't mean that we can't have conversations with Saskatchewan or conversations with BC, but we have to fix our own problems first. Be that role model, be that example, and then the other provinces have something that they can replicate, and I think they would. But this whole concept of, well, we're just going to separate off as a block, that's almost impossible and very complicated. And I think we don't have to start there, and I don't think that necessarily is even necessary. But, you know,
the problem that lies with Wexit National, or the National Party, which I don't even know what they call themselves. The problem with that is it doesn't change the amount of seats that you have in Western Canada. And you're going to control the balance of power, assuming that you get every seat. And that's not realistic. You're actually going to put Western Canada in a worse place than when we started off with. The way things need to move forward is exactly what we're doing here in the province. You start off with a provincial party. Now, I've had people from Saskatchewan reach out to me, I've had people from Manitoba reach out to me, and I've had people from BC reach out to me to come and explain how we're doing this. But we need to start giving the people back their voices. Because right now, 34 seats in Alberta, 14 in Saskatchewan, I'm not even sure how many in Manitoba, but even with all those together, if you got every seat, you're still not going to match Ontario.
Yep.
So you need to have some leverage, and that leverage is if each province controls their money. Each province controls all of these things that the Constitution already allows us to have. Now all of us have leverage, and we can ask for the things, or not even ask, demand. Let's demand the things that we want. We want constitutional reform. Okay, what's it going to take? We want this. But no, I guarantee you, not one government, whether it's Conservative Party, Liberal Party, I don't care if it's NDP or anybody, was willing to open up the Constitution again. Why? Because they knew Alberta wouldn't sign on, Saskatchewan wouldn't sign on, and it would be dead. So it's easier just to leave it alone, right? Mm-hmm. Max was the only one that I was actually talking about, you know, looking at the Constitution, whether it would be opened up again or not, I don't know. But I really believe that power belongs to the people, and it belongs to the provinces to start it, because we're not going to get it federally.
It's a big beast.
You know what? It's a fight. But you probably heard it at the Fair Deal panel, and I know I heard it. People are tired. All people need to do is take off the blinders. Stop voting because I like this party. I've always voted for this party. Start voting for what party has earned that right to represent you. Be it platform, be it whatever it takes. But we're not going to change what we need to change by simply complaining. You know, I said it.
But it's easy to complain.
It is easy to complain.
There's that whole, you're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. Complaining is just part of the problem.
So the example that I use, I'm from Alberta. My family's from Alberta. My father owned a company in Calgary for 35 years, so we're Albertan. I've never known Albertans to break their crayons and stomp out of the room and say, I'm done. Ever. Albertans, most of us ride horses. If not, we understand the metaphor. We get thrown off. We pick ourselves up, we dust ourselves off, and we get back on.
Usually after about the minute of, 1 second, I can't breathe, because you're lying flat on your back, and somebody's like, are you okay?
Exactly.
Yeah, give me a minute.
But that's exactly right. You know, we get back into the fight. We're never one to be kicked out of the fight. I
Well,
mean,
one of the things I found, because I've, as you know, lived all across Canada.
mhm.
So lived in Newfoundland and Labrador, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Ontario. I lived in Ottawa for, my goodness, 10 years. I've lived in BC and, of course, now in Alberta. So I haven't lived in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, but I think Albertans, prairie province,
Yeah.
I'm hoping I get a pass. And the territories and the Yukon and stuff, well, that was very Labrador for me. So I've kind of covered the gamut, I think, of Canadian,
Yeah.
what it stands to be Canadian. And the West, one of the things I found when I moved here is Albertans will never usually back down from a fight, but they're usually not one to start one. So, okay, maybe the 20-year-old bar brawls don't count, but seriously, there's something between farmers and fishermen a little bit that usually very generous, very, giving. Like you look at what Alberta has already given to Canada, $600 billion in
But that's
equalization
why
payments.
I don't think Alberta started this fight.
And that's my point so it's really, I think, surprising and somewhat alarming to see the number of people who actually are in support, or at least outwardly spoken, is supporting the concept of separation today. I think it just goes to show the seriousness of the situation.
It's very serious. People are mad.
Yeah, well, they're hurt too, right? It's
They're
like
hurt.
Nothing worse than not being recognized for the contributions that you have made, and for the sacrifices that you've made, right?
I think it's sort of twofold, though. I think we're angry, we're mad at the federal government for treating us the way we've been treated, like whatever.
I can get totally, somewhat, philosophical about that too, because people can only make you feel that way if you allow them to.
Sure, but then on the next hand, you have your provincial government that's not doing anything for you. So now not only are you angry, you're hurt, and then you combine the two. And we're not, like I said, we never started the fight, like you said as well. We never started the fight. But I'll be darned if Albertans aren't going to get up and get back into that fight and fight back hard. We believe in being fair. We believe in being honest. But Albertans, 9 times out of 10, are hard-working people that just want to support their families. And it's getting to the point very, very quickly. You want to pick a fight with us? Well, guess what? We're coming back and we're going to fight. And we're going to fight hard, and we're not going to get knocked down. But if we do, I guarantee you we're getting up. We're dusting ourselves off and we're jumping back into this fight.
Well, one of the reasons for me to bring that up is because Amazing Polly, I think you follow her a little bit.
Yeah.
And one of the things she's been talking about, and I've had many conversations with colleagues, friends, yourself included, it's about this demoralization that's going on. Mm-hmm. You have criminals today that are being made out to be heroes, and the victims are the ones that are being arrested and demonized. And I'm sitting here and going, and you do see a trend of that more and more and more. And the media, especially the mass media, has really been the out front with that. Mm-hmm. And it is demoralizing. People, you can only get beaten on for so long, though, and you eventually just go, you're beaten up. You're tired of fighting, right? And where do we go from here? Because, we thought with the UCP, I think after speaking to a lot of the MLAs, and a lot of the people inside of that organization, I think they're very disappointed, many of them, with the outcome. I think some of the MLAs were promised that they would have a voice, mm-hmm. And that they could represent their districts. And that hasn't happened. It's been run more like the Federal Conservative Party of Canada, where it's a top-down approach, not a bottom-up. Mm-hmm. And so how... I want people to see things more positive, right? I want to see solutions. I don't always talk about the problems. I want people not to get demoralized, because I have people who I'm like, I hope you're still in good spirits. And it's like, it's really hard to be in good spirits. And I know, but we can't, I think that is probably the biggest, risk factor that we run into, is people just getting completely demoralized and beaten up for so long that they're just going, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah, it's know that as well as
well,
I do.
You came in today. I'm like, you look tired.
I'm tired. Well, and of course I work, right? So I work at the prison, but I work with. So the easiest way to explain all of that is if people are tired of hearing all of these things, they need to be open to a solution.
Yes.
Right? And what we're doing.
And what we've already done in the past hasn't worked.
That's
so
right.
The definition of insanity, keep doing the same thing, expect a different result.
And that's exactly it. And we can't, I quoted Albert Einstein at my last meeting in that we can't use the same way of thinking to make the decisions that got us to those decisions in the first place. So, and that's sort of loosely
Well, even the
putting it.
same people, like
Right.
can't, the same people who created the problem are not going to be the same people
They're
to
not gonna-
find the solution.
Right. They're not going to change it. So what we are offering with the People's Party of Alberta is that change. Come out and talk to us. I mean, we have events going on all over the place. Ask the questions. We're very much, our Constitution is very, very clear. This is a bottom up, not a top down kind of
So where
party.
would we find that Constitution and information on your events? And
So information on our events is at peoplespartyofelberta.com. We also have, I believe our Constitution is on there as well. If not, you just simply have to ask for it. We provide it to our members. We're selling memberships right now.
so if I wanted to become a member,
Yeah.
how would I do that?
Again, get a hold of one of us either through the website or come to one of our events. We're speaking in Innisfail on Wednesday, Leduc on Thursday. We're doing Brooks. We're doing Medicine Hat. We're doing Lethbridge, Grand Prairie, Fort McMurray. Come out and hear what we have to say. You don't have to agree with 100% of what we're saying. That's what's great. But if you can at least agree with 60% of what we say, then we can make some changes. And if you're really interested in fighting for Alberta, you got to be willing to make that change. Take the blinders off.
Awesome. Do you want to say anything else?
I'm good.
I'm good.
I think I said too much already.
Well, that's we had that conversation when we were running for the People's Party of Canada federally, was the fact that we were allowed to speak. We were free to speak. We were free to have an opinion. It's really hard to disagree with most of the platform items we had because they were founded on those principles of freedom, fairness, respect, and responsibility. And, the fact that you've ventured out and looked at the provincial problems that we're having. And I think we can resolve many of the issues that we have provincially at a provincial or federally even at a provincial level by just really taking back the powers that we already have. I don't think we have to separate, but I think by taking that option off the table is a mistake.
Yeah.
Because don't make a threat that's not real, A, but B, you have to be able to follow through. And if we're not willing to follow through, and Jason Kenney has already said that, and he's not taking those steps. So to know that people have another alternative. And just so you know, I have no affiliation with the People's Party of Alberta, despite Kelly's best efforts so far. And
Working on it.
And I was going to say, and I'll say so far. But, it's worth getting informed, and it's worth taking the matter into your own hands and making some decisions for yourself and throwing out some of the baggage that comes with, I belong to this party or that party.
Well, I think you can agree with me. When you and I were driving around with Max, one of the greatest things that I found, it didn't matter where we were. If we were talking to Albertans here, Max would look at you or he'd look at me and, well, what do you have to say? And then you would give the answer, and it wouldn't be Max. Or I would give the answer. And to me, that was, well, one, it was refreshing because now the people that we're representing here are getting that response from us. And that's not going to be any different, right? It's about hearing, listening.
Yeah, 2 ears, 1 mouth.
Right. And I've said it how many times. The stars of all of this aren't us who are running. The stars of all of this are the people that are doing the voting and asking the questions and getting the information.
So peoplespartyofelberta.com.
Right.
If you wanted to join as a member, you just request. I do believe you have to sign an actual physical piece of paper.
We have a membership form that will send it to you. We're taking memberships, so what will happen is once we become certified, then your membership will be given to you after that. Right now, you're buying a membership into what's the Center for Pioneering Alberta Independence. That's the association that's affiliated with creating the People's Party of Alberta. We're selling memberships, we're taking signatures, and we're moving forward.
And that's right, because you need 9,000 signatures, roughly 8,500.
8,500, I believe, yes.
Right, so you always use a little bit of a buffer, a few extra.
Right.
But you need signatures to get the official party status.
Right.
Right, so if you want to help, you can, doesn't hurt, right?
Well, if you want to volunteer, come out and help us get signatures. Right now we've got about 30 people. I would love another 30 more. It helps us get the message out there and talking to people. And if you want an event, hold an event. I'll come and talk. And I've been to many, and I'll be to many, many more. And it, like I said, it's about educating the public.
Absolutely. So there you have it. It's Kelly Lorencz, People's Party of Alberta, and my good friend. Thank you to our subscribers who've been growing in numbers. Thank you to those who have been making contributions online who make this possible. Don't forget to subscribe, share with your friends, include the notification, the little bell there, so that you're getting the videos as they are released. And don't forget to share your comments and your feedback.
Hi everyone, I'm Kelly Lorencz with the People's Party of Alberta. For more information on the People's Party of Alberta, go to www.peoplespartyofelberta.com. Memberships are available there, Constitution is available there, and any questions that you might have, feel free to contact us for more information.